the polls, the nationwide poll, Biden is now leading. How do you explain that?
It's going to go back and forth a lot between now and November. I'm sure that Trump's conviction has made somewhat of a difference for Biden. But remember, we have this debate next week, and that could also change a lot. We could see another flashback to Trump going ahead in the polls himself, depending on how Biden performs. So I think that a bit of turbulence is to be expected. However, Trump is still making significant gains among demographics that really matter, including women, especially Black and Hispanic women, young voters like myself. And he's basically reached the point of support among men that he was at back in 2016, which is another significant tell of which direction this election is heading towards.
Yeah, that debate's going to be really important.
Never Trumpers over at Fox News, unfortunately, are at it again. The likes of Rupert Murdoch, Paul Ryan, and Neil Cavuto are once again attempting to thwart the Trumpian surge, now with fake polls. We're going to see precisely why this latest poll coming from Fox is utter trash. And we're going to see how even forces within the Rupert Murdoch empire are admitting it and admitting that Trump is absolutely running away with this. Greetings, everyone. It is a live stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you stay sane in these crazy and insane times. So whatever you do, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe. We got a jam-packed show today. We got Fox once again trying to sabotage President Trump, and they are failing miserably. I'm going to show you why. We're going to look at the latest election forecasts and predictions, all of which show Fox to be absolutely full of it. And we're even going to see an alternative theory as to why Fox released such an obviously flawed and compromised poll. All that and more on this live stream Friday. Make sure you subscribe on both Rumble and on YouTube and on X and all of our different, download our app. We've got so much stuff going on, gang. And again, remember, as always, as many of you know, our super chats have been completely disabled because YouTube has totally and completely demonetized us. So if you want to ask me your questions during the show, just click on that link below or go to fight.turleytalks.com. That's fight.turleytalks.com. Sign up for any level of support you like, and you have instant access to our private virtual platform where you can ask me any question you like, and I'll answer it here on this live stream. So just click on that link below or go to fight.turleytalks.com. Sign up for any level of support, and I'll answer your questions on this live stream. It will be my honor. Also, I have something really, really big to share with you. This is juicy. But first, do you remember me telling you some weeks back when we just launched our brand new app, how depressed I was, how black-pilled I got when we came under attack from Google and YouTube as our content was labeled harmful content? That's right. Our video content is now harmful content as far as YouTube is concerned, and we got totally, completely demonetized. Remember all that when I was just all black-pilled? Well, guess what, my friends? I ain't depressed no more. You may have heard I went away to Utah, to beautiful southern Utah last week. And let's just say my team and I are working on something right now that is absolutely huge, right? Huge. I mean, really, really huge. I mean, it's absolutely immaculate. So what is it? Well, I can only tell you this. This will be one of the biggest positive changes to Turley Talks that will benefit you, my fellow courageous and loyal patriots, for years to come. So what is this huge thing? Well, we're planning a special event, a special unveiling in early July to tell you all about it. So next week, I'm going to be sharing more details, and you really don't want to miss it. So be on the alert next week for more details about this amazing event. I'm going to tease you with that. Let's dive right in here, gang. The Never Trumpers over at Fox News are back at it again, and they're more utterly pathetic than ever. At the very moment that Trump appears to be absolutely breaking away in the polls, literally all the polls, the Fox so-called news outlet, you know, the same so-called news outlet that gleefully called Arizona for Biden literally 5 seconds after their polls closed in 2020, all the while refusing to call Florida for Trump, even though he led the entire night for hours. That Rupert Murdoch never Trumper outlet that fired Tucker Carlson without ever explaining to either us or him why. Yeah, that so-called news outlet is now claiming that Biden is beating Trump. Take a look.
I'm Brett Baer. We are releasing new Fox polls right now about the presidential race. President Biden gets his best result this election cycle in the head-to-head against former President Donald Trump. He leads 50-48. That is within the margin of error. President Biden hasn't been ahead of former President Trump in the polls since October 2023. He trailed Trump by 1 point last month. Again, all within the margin of error, a very tight race. When listing extremely important issues to their vote, registered voters in this survey citing the future of democracy at 68%, the economy at 66%, followed by stability and normalcy.
Stop. Stop. I can't take it anymore. Brett Baer is breaking me. I cannot take this anymore. The future of democracy? That's the number one issue among the constituents they polled. The future of freaking democracy. I'm gobsmacked, as you would say across the pond. I'm speechless. I mean, seriously. Let's just take a step back. Serenity now. Serenity now. Take a step back. Name me one poll. One other poll from the most left-wing of outlets, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. Name me one poll from any far-left outlet anywhere in the country that shows that the number one issue among voters is the future of democracy. The number one. I'm just going to come out and say it. That's a lie. What you just heard is a flat out lie. And then to make it even more absurd, stability and normalcy. That's new. That's a category now. Stability and normalcy. What the hell does that even mean? And then you're telling us that more people prioritize this vague notion of stability and normalcy than the southern border chaos? Gang, seriously. I'm not kidding here. Seriously, I'm just going to say it. There is literally no difference. This is where we've come as a country. There is no categorical difference between Brett Baer in that segment, in that moment there. There is virtually no difference between Brett Baer and a North Korean news outlet. Okay? You could have just shown that North Korean emblem. That's it. Brett Baer, he can don his kimono and read off, or whatever they call it in North Korea. They can read off state-approved talking points just like they do in North Korean regime states, and there wouldn't be a shred of difference from what he just did right there. He's just reading off of polls concocted and fabricated and ultimately approved by the powers that be at Fox News. Rupert Murdoch's henchmen. And the more we dive into the crosstabs of this Fox News poll, the more stinky it becomes. Look at this. This poll actually has Biden winning the rural vote. The rural vote. 50-48. You know, the vote that voted for J.D. Vance. The single most MAGA demographic on the planet. Fox News actually says, yeah, Biden wins them. Gang, if you believe that Biden is winning the rural vote, I've got beachfront property in Arkansas I want to sell you. I'm serious. Give me a call. Let's make the deal. At the very least, that number is objectively speaking a total outlier. At the very least. And Brett Baer should have told you that. But of course he didn't. It's a complete and total outlier that should immediately render the poll suspect. Here's another total outlier. The Fox poll has Trump beating Biden among white voters by just 6%, 46 to 40. Now, keep in mind, every Republican since Richard Nixon has won the white vote by double digits. Trump won it by almost 20 points back in 2020. 20 in 2020. Again, name me one other poll, just one, that shows Biden actually poised now to win the white vote. President Trump himself wasted no time in trashing the Paul Ryan concocted poll. Posting on Truth Social, he wrote, quote, "The latest Fox News poll is trash. They used a biased, Democrat-leaning sample of voters, polling more Biden 2020 voters than Trump 2020 voters to skew the results in favor of Crooked Joe. I'm leading big in virtually every other poll, including in all the key battleground states like Wisconsin, where I just held a massive rally, in Pennsylvania, where I'll be on Saturday. Also, the number one issue in this country is not protecting democracy. It's inflation and immigration. If it's protecting democracy, Trump is your best choice because Crooked Joe is the greatest threat to democracy in history with his open borders and weaponization of our justice system against his political opponent, me. Fox News polls have never treated me or MAGA fairly. That's actually true. Don't worry, we will win. Fox News should get rid of Paul Ryan and get a new pollster, but they won't. Now, in an ironic twist of events, if you want further evidence that this Fox News poll is absolutely absurd, take a look at the cover of today's New York Post. Now, keep in mind, this is the same owner as Fox. This is another Rupert Murdoch company, right? New York Post. Look at this headline as compared to that Fox News poll released yesterday. If you're listening by way of our 20 million podcast downloads, it says swing for the fences. It's got a picture of Trump holding a baseball bat poised to hit a home run. Swing for the fences. New poll has Trump up in every swing state, and he's battling for blue, Minnesota and New York too. Well, which is it? They both can't be true. Which is it? Is Biden up to nationally, or is Trump absolutely crushing it in the swing states, plus Minnesota and New York, deep blue, two deep blue states? Which is it? They can't both be true. If this isn't a polling fail on the part Fox, freaking Fox, man, what talk about a fall? I mean, if this isn't a fail, I don't know what is. Never Trump. Rupert Murdoch's Fox tells us Biden is surging. Polls have swung 15 points in his favor over the last few weeks. He's now officially beating Trump. And at the same time, the same never Trumper Rupert Murdoch's New York Post tells us, nope, never mind. Sorry, guys. Nope, sorry. Little outlier there. Trump is actually knocking it out of the park. He's crushing it in the polls. Pay no attention to Fox. He's actually poised to win freaking New York and Minnesota. So what the heck gives here? What's going on? There is a theory of what Fox is doing here. And ironically, the claim is that it's there to help Trump. It's the polar opposite of Fox trying once again to sabotage Trump. I will be very curious what you think in the chat. But first, gang, if you're just joining us, if you want to ask me your questions because YouTube has suspended our super chats, just click on that link below. Join any one of our levels of support. That's right. Just go to fight.turleytalks.com. That's fight.turleytalks.com. Join any level of our support from bronze to diamond, and you will be given access to our own private virtual platform where you can ask me all your questions. I'll be happy to answer them in this live stream. Also, I'm sure you all saw Biden's brain freeze at his recent White House event, right? I mean, he literally couldn't even find his way off stage and had to be physically escorted off the stage, right, by Obama. His mental and physical decline is so painfully obvious to everyone. Now, what's so interesting here is that the event is actually being debated by both sides on the factuality of what really happened on stage, which is why I'm so grateful for today's sponsor, Ground News. Unfortunately, Josh, do we have some? There we go. Ground News is an app and website that combines related news from from across the political spectrum into one place. I love that instead of sifting through tons of sources myself just to try to verify the idiot narratives the left might be pushing, Ground News actually does all that for me. Try out using the link below at ground.news/Steve. That's ground.news/Steve. I always want to bring the most important topics to the table when they're hot. And Ground News saves me a ton of time. I'm so grateful to it. I get to use the time bringing more analysis to you, my fellow patriots. Now, here's a story on Biden's inability to walk himself off of stage. Ground News actually shows there are 19 articles covering the story, with barely 12% coming from left-leaning sources. And why is that, I wonder? Why are virtually all the articles coming from the right? Well, it's obviously because the left doesn't want to show Biden's rapidly declining state. And because Ground News gives you access to every headline for every news story, you can train your mind to start recognizing media bias on your own, just based on the language the media outlets are using. For example, they always, whenever they have the word freeze among left-wing headlines, it's always in quotations. Biden froze on stage, quote unquote. Whereas right-leaning articles, they just simply point out he froze, which is what he objectively did. So my absolute feature on Ground News is their blind spot feed. You can go straight here and see what stories are disproportionately covered by the left or right to expose the narratives that they don't want you to see. So I can't imagine why liberals wouldn't want their base knowing that Trump is nearly 20 points ahead of Biden in the latest Iowa poll, which we're going to be looking at in mere moments. With the election coming up, gang, and my role as your Patriot Professor, I cannot recommend this resource enough. I'm proud to use Ground News and share it with you, my darling audience. Click on that link below or go to ground.news/Steve. That's ground.news/Steve. You could even scan, if we've got it, a QR code. I thought we would have a QR code. Either way, I don't know anything how to do a QR code. Just click on that link below. Go to ground.news/Steve. If you sign up through my link, you get 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use for unlimited access to all of their features. Ground News is doing important work, and I hope you'll check them out. All right, there is an alternative theory here that you should know about, and it's very, very interesting in terms of this Fox News poll. The theory is that in the end, even though he's a never Trumper, Rupert Murdoch and the vast majority of the billionaire class actually want Trump back. They want Trump back for a variety of reasons, obviously the economy, but more than that, the lawfare, the weaponized legalism. That freaked them out. Because if the Democrats can do that to Trump, obviously they can do that to any billionaire. And they've been watching what the state of Delaware has been doing to Elon Musk. So they're starting to freak out a little bit, thinking maybe we need a bit of a regime change here. Okay. What's the best way to guarantee a rapidly cognitively declining candidate remain the nominee? What's the best way to guarantee that Biden does not get replaced? Because obviously, if Biden could get replaced, that could possibly jumpstart the Democrats and lead them to victory, right? With a Michelle or a Hillary or whatever. I mean, that's the theory. I don't think it would, but. And so, what better way to assuage the fears of concerned Democrats like James Serpenthead Carville? Looking at those polls, it's like walking in on your grandmother naked. Can't get out of your mind. What's the best way? What's the better way to assuage the fears of concerned Democrats? Democrats concerned about ailing Joe, than to show some polls with Biden up. Yeah, you're going to have to finagle the internals, but they don't care. They're not looking at that. They just see, Biden's up. Biden's beating Trump by 2 points. Wow. That's one of the theories out there, that Fox is actually, ironically, intentionally trying to manipulate the Democrats into keeping Biden in the race so Trump could actually crush him in November in an electoral landslide, which every single poll, this leads to the second part of our video here, every single poll out there, literally every single poll shows he's poised to do. Trump is poised to win in an electoral blowout. So I'd take that theory for what it's worth. Now, let me show you, speaking of this blowout, let me show you what is really happening here in the polls. Because, again, the New York Post cover story alluded to this, all right? Trump is surging in deep blue Minnesota and in deep blue New York. Trump is crushing it in at least 2 deep blue states. We can add Virginia in that. It's actually 3 states, 3 blue states. I don't know why. Maybe they just didn't have it in the polling that they looked. I think it was the Emerson polling. Trump is crushing it in 3 blue states, and that's huge in terms of understanding what's really going on in the polling. All right. So let's just start with New York. And again, I just want to take you a step back. Again, huge shout out. I always give him a shout out because he deserves it more than anyone. Rich Barris, the People's Pundit, has taught me more than anyone else how to read and analyze polls. So go out and subscribe to Rich's YouTube channel, his Rumble channel, the People's Pundit. He is amazing. I mean, the guy is, I can't speak enough of him. Let's start with New York. Again, one of the bluest of blue states in the nation. The latest Siena College poll that just dropped, I believe, the other day. It's the latest in a number of polls that all show the same thing. Biden is leading Trump in New York by single digits. In this case, by 8 points. Biden is leading Trump by 8 points in a state that he won by nearly 25 points in 2020. Let that soak in. Biden is leading Trump by 8 points in a state that he won by nearly 25 points. It's not just a colossal collapse of support. It is a poll that cannot be true and at the same time that Fox News poll be true. Trump can't be nipping at Biden's heels in one of the bluest states in the union and at the same time be losing to Biden in the national vote. And one of the reasons for this is because New York independents are breaking for Trump big time. He's got a double-digit lead among New York independents. And here's the key. Trump right now is far more likely to win New York than Biden is to win Texas or Florida or North Carolina, for that matter. Again, Rich Barris does a masterful job in assessing all of this. That's a very important objective dynamic to understanding where the state of the race is today. Trump is more likely to win a deep blue state right now as we speak than Biden is to win any light red state. I mean, you'll see like Texas and Florida and North Carolina as being light red. I don't think they're light red. I think they're deep red. Regardless, that's what you're going to see on the election projection maps, like, Decision Desk and 538 and Real Clear Politics and the like. But the point is, Trump is more likely to win a deep blue state than Biden is to win a light red or lighter red state. Here's another way of making sense of this polling. Let's take a look at the latest polls coming out of Virginia as well as Minnesota, right? So these are two solid, and I mean solid, Democrat states, at least when it comes to presidential elections. Minnesota was the lone state that voted for Mondale in '84. Virginia hasn't voted Republican since 2004, in 20 years. They're both highly reliable Democrat states for presidential politics. Right now, as we speak, Biden is in danger of losing both. I mean, very real danger. These are two highly reliable Democrat states, and Biden is in danger of losing both. We now have 3 polls in a row in the last 2 weeks, all showing the same thing. Trump and Biden are tied in Virginia. We're getting poll after poll showing that Trump and Biden are tied in the state that Biden won by 10 points, by double digits in 2020. And at the same time, they're tied in Minnesota. Now, again, in terms of analysis, by comparison, name me one, not two, one reliably Republican state, a Republican state that is as reliably Republican as Virginia and Minnesota are reliably Democrat. Name me one reliably Republican state that Trump is in danger of losing. Oh, wait, go ahead. Do your research. Google it. Find me a single reliably Republican state on par with Minnesota or Virginia in terms of their Democrat fidelity that Trump is in danger of losing. There isn't one. Doesn't exist. No one's talking about it, that's for sure. Now, that's an important crosstab, as it were, to understand the overall macro dynamics of the polling. The bottom line, regardless of what a single individual poll says, the bottom line, when you take the collection of polls that are out there and aggregate them, average them, and then cross-reference them, right now as we speak, it's Biden who is in danger of losing at least 2 reliably blue states, whereas Trump is not in any way, shape, or form in comparable danger with red states. It's really that simple. Now, we can continue the analogy. We can continue cross-tabbing, as it were. If Trump is poised to win Virginia and Minnesota, if that's where we are right now in the election, then there is no possible scenario where he loses Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Why? You say, what? How do you leap from Virginia to Minnesota to the Sun Belt and to the blue wall? Well, it's not hard, because each one of these states, Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, each and every one of those states is significantly more Republican than is either Virginia or Minnesota. Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, they're all, +4, +6, +7, +9 Republican in comparison to either Minnesota or Virginia. So the key here is that Trump doesn't actually have to win Virginia or Minnesota. That's noise. Don't let the signal, as Steve Bannon always says, don't let the signal get lost in the noise. That's noise. It's not a question of whether Trump is going to pull off an extraordinary win in New York or Virginia or Minnesota. That's not what's important here. That's not at least the important indicator here. That would be great. That is certainly possible, but that's not the prize. The fact that we're even talking about Biden possibly losing those reliably Democrat states is important, not because he actually will lose them. It's important because the polling is indicative of how he will lose the blue wall states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and the Sun Belt states of Arizona and Georgia, and certainly Florida and North Carolina. I think those are gone. And it's precisely because there are more Republicans in those states. Again, the logic here is rather simple. If Biden is in danger of losing states that are heavily Democrat, how much more is he in danger of losing states that are far more Republican? But there's yet one more crosstab comparison that's even more dramatic. And this one, I think, puts the final nail in the coffin of this utterly embarrassing Fox News poll. But first, if you're just joining us, if you want to ask me your questions, because YouTube has unfortunately suspended our super chats, just click on that link below. Join any one of our levels by going to fight.turleytalks.com, fight.turleytalks.com. Click on that link below. Join any one of our levels, and you have access to our very own private virtual platform where you can ask me all of your questions. I will be happy to answer them on this live stream. Also, you know, it is springtime and the bees are out and they're buzzing and they're doing a lot more than just pollinating. Now bees are actually saving America from the woke wave of leftist culture that's trying to wipe out all that's good and true. I kid you not, gang. Turley Talks is teaming up with Make Honey Great Again. This is absolutely spectacular. MAGA honey. Now you get a 16-ounce bottle of pure, raw, ultra MAGA honey packaged in a bottle that looks like our great President Donald Trump, number 45, soon to be number 47. This untouched raw honey came straight from 11,000 hives in South Carolina. It's all natural. It's absolutely wonderful. And I'm telling you, honey never tastes as good as it does coming from a Trump-inspired bottle. Trust me. So what are you waiting for, gang? Visit MakeHoneyGreatAgain.com. That's MakeHoneyGreatAgain.com. Use promo code Turley to show your support. We can make honey and America great again. Click on that link below right now. I love it. I love it. Trump honey. It's Mick. It's awesome. Awesome. The best. It is simply the best. All right. Take a look at this from the Des Moines Register. We talked about this earlier this week. Now, if you don't know, the Des Moines Register is considered, as I understand, by every single polling outlet out there, it is considered to be one of the single most reputable pollsters out there, historically speaking. They generally poll within the margin of error. They are absolutely amazing. Look at this. By way of podcast, I will explain it to you. In Iowa, which, keep in mind, was one of the bluest of blue states in the nation. They actually voted for Mike Dukakis back in '88. In Iowa, Trump is now leading by nearly 20 points. In the four-way race with RFK, among others in the mix, Trump leads Biden by an absolutely astonishing 18 points. He won, if I recall, he won Iowa by 7, 8, 9, something like that. It was very, very significant, no question, both in 2016, 2020. But 18, nearly 20 points. I mean, Iowa is basically turning into the Republican version of New York. This is incredible. And again, it's coming from a historically very, very reliable pollster, the Des Moines Register, right? The Des Moines Register. And they have Trump absolutely running away with it in Iowa. Again, once a solid blue state. It was solid blue because it tended to vote for the old school Democrat, the populist farmer Democrat, right? But obviously those days are over. They're all MAGA country now. Now, why is that 18-point lead so important here? Well, it's because Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania tend to vote the same way as Iowa. Now, there have been exceptions, no question. 88 was one of them. 2020 was one of 88, of course, when Iowa went with Dukakis. 2020, when Iowa went with Trump. And Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania barely went with Biden after all those shenanigans. But generally speaking, as far as Iowa goes, wherever Iowa goes, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania go. And here's the key. There is no conceivable, how do I put this? There is no conceivable way that Trump is up by 18 in Iowa without being significantly up in those other 3 states. Their demographics are just simply too similar. Again, at the very, very least, if Trump is up 18 in Iowa, there is no conceivable universe where he loses Wisconsin. Demographically, they're just too similar. And that's the election right there. If Trump takes Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin, it's over. He passes the 270 mark. It's and Trump can't be tied in Virginia and Minnesota and within literally striking distance in New York and lose the Sun Belt of Arizona and Georgia. It's just not going to happen. All of these crosstabs that I'm giving to you, they are far more relevant and valid in explaining why, according to the latest Emerson polling, Trump is beating Biden today in every single swing state. Every single one, ahead of the debates. Simply put, either all of these polls that I just put forward to you are wrong. I mean, there's no way around this, okay? This is a very simple bifurcation. Either all of these polls are wrong or the Fox News poll is full of crap. Those are your 2 choices. Either all of these polls, all of them, all the cross-referencing that matches up are wrong, or Paul Ryan's Fox News is full of it. They can't both be right. And I can certainly tell you which one I'm putting my money on. Over to you, gang. Over to you. Let's hear. I'm sure you've got tons and tons of questions, comments to make. So remember, if you want to ask me your questions, because YouTube has suspended our super chats, just click on that link below or go to fight.turleytalks.com. Join any one of our levels of support. You have access to our very own private, exclusive virtual platform where you can ask me all your questions. I'll be happy to answer them on this live stream. Oh, yeah, and one more thing.
I'll be back.
That's right, gang. He is back. It's time to show our support and celebrate the great return by clicking on that link below and getting your very own Trumpinator 2024 bobblehead in preparation for Donald Trump's glorious reascendance to the United States presidency. This collectible bobblehead from Proud Patriots is made with the highest quality material, and it really is a must-have for any Trump fan who wants to send some positive energy towards what's shaping up to be the single most glorious political comeback in history. Now, don't wait. There are just a limited number of these collectibles, and you don't want to be caught paying way more later on eBay from someone who bought one now. So whatever you do, don't wait. Click on that link below right now. Show your support for Trump 2024 today. All right, Josh, what do we got? What do we got? Get my pen here. Paul, dear Paul, much of the recent buzz on the internet has been about the Dems replacing Biden, but with who? Harris, Newsom, Buttigieg, Michelle Obama, all poll worse. Very good point. Good, Paul. Than he, if that's even possible. Do you have any ideas? No, I'm Paul. That's awesome. By the way, you did a great. You're doing a better job with this than what a lot of commentators, Republican political commentators are doing. Oh, it's going to be Michelle Obama. I'm telling you. Oh, they're going to get rid of Biden. Now, granted, don't get me wrong. There is chatter among the Democrats to get rid of him. That's real. We did a video on that. There is chatter inside the highest echelons of the Democratic Party. I mean, the Washington Post, there were headlines all this week. What do we do with Biden? How do we get rid of him? That's basically the question they're asking. There is no answer. There is no answer. There is no way they're going to be able to get rid. I can concede that they're going to be able to get rid of Biden, at least even some semblance of legality. But I know they're the party of weaponized lawfare. What else would they be, right? They'll stoop to no level of, or no depth of corruption's too low for them. But I just don't know how they can do it. I honestly don't. I don't know how you take the delegates that were voted for a particular person and then just in certain states and then just pick up and just hand them to another person. I don't know how you do that. How could you do that? If so, just imagine we all voted for Trump in our primaries, and then he goes to prison, right, in a couple of weeks, and the Paul Ryans and the DeSantoids or whatever take over the Republican National Committee. They take over the convention. They decide, all right, we're going to give all of Trump's delegates now to Nikki Haley. I mean, it would be a civil war, literally, inside the Republican Party. Why don't you think that's going to happen in the Democratic Party? Democrats hate Hillary. They can't stand Hillary. They don't want her. And they're not necessarily big fans of Michelle. They were huge fans of Barack, but Mike, whole different story. So I don't think that. I think they're stuck with Biden. I don't see any way. I mean, we'll see what happens after the debate. Again, the big chatter is if Biden really blows the debate, which he shouldn't because he'll be so medicated. But if he does blow the debate, I don't know. All bets are off. Maybe they'll pull something out of the hat, but I don't see any possible scenario at this point. They're stuck with him. Thanks, Paul. RBG Wiz, with all the replacement talk we hear about Creepy Joe, why do we not hear Donna Rice? Checks lots of boxes. Female, black, Obama-ite, insider, cogent, verbal, smart, perhaps too many. Are you talking about Condoleezza Rice? I mean, you may be right, but again, I don't know how it's even possible. Yeah, yeah. Donna Rice is a model. So maybe Condoleezza Rice you're talking about. Anyway, yeah, I just don't think. I mean, maybe, but again, how do they legally pull that off? How do you give delegates that were awarded to a particular candidate for whom the primary voters voted to someone they didn't vote for? How do you do that? How do you get away with that legally? I don't even know. So we'll have to see. But again, the very fact that we're even having this conversation shows you where the state of this race is. It's not where the Fox News poll thinks it is. Lynn, delegitimization when a citizenry no longer has confidence in government and its institutions, leading logically to the dissolution of that government. The fall of for example, the fall of the Soviet Union, 1991, apparently was a non-violent dissolution, but did it not have an infrastructure that allowed for the transfer of power to the individual republics or independent nation states? How would that work in the United States? We have a standing army that would put down an insurrection with F-15s. That's certainly the way. Yeah, that's certainly the way Biden would do. Yeah. So obviously, what happened in the Soviet Union was radically dramatic. They lost control of the Union, so literally a third of their territories seceded overnight. I mean, we're talking Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Armenia. I mean, they just all seceded. They didn't have the power to stop them. Yeah, of course, Eastern Europe crushed the Soviet bloc. Delegitimation here in the United States, I don't think operates with the same dynamic. The dynamic, possibly similar. The dynamic here certainly seems to be more, it moves in the direction of sort of a radical federalism. Very similar to what we've been seeing DeSantis doing in Florida. And again, he's been rewarded politically for that, not in a national race, but as a state governor, he's certainly been rewarded politically for it, where he basically turned Florida into a sanctuary state, a state where he was able to raise up, legal administrative barriers between the adults in D.C. And the citizens of Florida. So the adults in D.C., the Surgeon General there can pass vax mandates or whatever, mask mandates, whatever. And DeSantis basically turned around and said, well, we're going to appoint our own Surgeon General, our own state Surgeon General. And he has the right to veto whatever mandates you put in place. We saw Oklahoma doing similar things. We're obviously seeing Texas doing the same things at the southern border. So while it's not necessarily secession and breaking away like we saw with the Soviet Union, it is clearly a kind of, I guess you could kind of call it a soft secession, or perhaps better, it's the kind of independence, state-based independence, that a federal system does make room for and that we can exploit as delegitimation continues to just totally infest DC and the deep state and these proponents of liberal democracy who are the most illiberal totalitarians on the planet. So I think you're going to start to see much, much more red state sanctuary programs start, where if you want to find some legal, administrative, mandate reprieve from the absurd, insane nuts in DC, come move here. That's basically been their argument for economics to businesses. If you want to leave the red tape insanity and tax insanity in these blue states, come on over to Texas, come on over to Oklahoma, come on over to Florida, come on over to Tennessee. We'll leave you alone. And they've been doing that. That's exactly what they've been doing. And so we're seeing the same thing, I think, when it comes to just values. If you're just sick and tired of just insane woke public schools, insane woke universities, insane woke mandates, come on over to these red states. You're not going to have to worry about that here. And we're going to make sure that otherwise we wouldn't be in office. You'd vote us out in a heartbeat. So it tends to work reciprocally. In terms of DC itself, we'll have to say, in terms of replacing DC with a more MAGA-based, populist-based, and re-legitimized government, we'll have to see. I mean, Trump is talking about Schedule F, implementing Schedule F that would get rid of tons and tons and tons of deep state operatives, fire them on the spot. I'm definitely of the view we have to get rid of the FBI, the CIA. We've got to reconfigure our intelligence agencies and rein them in so as to make sure they're working on behalf of the people as opposed to surveilling the people. So I don't think we would see it fall like the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union had all these different extra Russian blocks in there that could easily appeal to a nationalism and break away. I don't think we'll see that. And I don't think we'll see a completely different political system rise up, like with a whole new constitution, so forth, that Russia has seen over the last 30 years. But we would certainly see, I think, a radical federalism come in among particularly red states, as seeing themselves as walls against the rotting blue state and DC implosion, and eventually will replace the reigning paradigm of the deep state and the administrative state with just more sane policies and just very, very different actors, and perhaps some real major reshuffling and renovation in terms of the three-letter agencies. That's what I'm seeing. Thanks, Lynn. That's awesome. Patriot Jules, Dr. Steve, I listened to what you said. My relationship with my daughter is more important than politics. Oh, cool. Yes, Patriot Jules, I'm remembering this. My relationship with my daughter is more important than politics. So for those who don't know, Jules is having some issues with his daughter, who's a leftist, far leftist. And he asked, right, how do I convince her, that she's wrong, basically? Or, how do I show her the way? How do I show her the truth? And my argument to him was, the very first thing you got to root this in, because again, I deal with my own family. And I sought actually counseling on this, wise counsel. And the wisest counsel I've ever received is focus on the relationship, not on being right. It's better. Which would you rather have? A relationship or being right? Love is often rooted in the midst of some really serious bad juju. Think of the cross of Christ. It is the ultimate expression of love in the midst of the ultimate expression of evil. Right? So that paradox comes together in the primacy and the overflowing of love. So there you go. So my relationship with my daughter is far more important than politics. Amen. I brought up Stonehenge. Change comes in violent ways, was her response. I don't get the Stonehenge. Maybe you can give us a little detail on that. Change comes in violent ways, was her response. I almost don't want to be alive during this chapter of one of my kids shouting over me that we are effing to ruin the earth. As a psych major who loved chemistry, physics, plate tectonics, geography, and geology, I know the science. I know the ice ages. Jane to work election. Is there anything else there? Or is that? Okay. Well, maybe you're volunteering to work the election as well. Again, yes. So what you just said is brilliant. What you just said is I showed her love and she spit back in my face. Welcome to love. Welcome to valuing the relationship more than being right. Seriously, welcome to valuing the relationship more than being right. Again, the Christian cross is the symbol here. What is the cross? The cross reveals to us who we really are. The cross is a mirror. The cross is a mirror. It's a mirror of who we really are. And who are we? We are people who hate the truth by nature. That's who we are. We are people who, when truth comes into our midst, we crucify it. We spit in its face. We mock it. We ridicule it. And we destroy it. That's who we are. But what else is the cross? The cross is the most amazing expression of who God is. Because in the midst of that fallen, sinful reality, what does God do? He lowers himself and he subjects himself to all of that humiliation, all of that evil, all of that scorn, all of that spit, and ultimately all of that crucifying death. Why? So as to show us that his love is deeper and more profound than any hate we can come up with. Evil by its nature feeds off of good. Evil is like a hole in a shirt. Evil is not a thing. Hate is not a thing. It's parasitic of love, the infinite ocean of being that is love, that is God, in all of its Trinitarian fullness of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so the resurrection, of course, is the undeniable, unmistakable declaration of that God's love simply cannot be extinguished. It breaks open, breaks free, and transfigures the world. So if you're showing love and you're getting saliva, oral saliva, basically, right, rhetorical saliva spit back at you, dig deeper into that love. That's what you do. Because the love knows no grounds. Note, every humiliation, every evil that they heaped on Christ only ended up magnifying his love all the more. The more you can disparage and impugn and malign and spit and humiliate, the more you're just showing how infinite God's love really is. That's the way you have to, it seems to me that's the way you have to think. You don't have a line. You don't go, okay, you crossed this line. This isn't geopolitics. You got lines in geopolitics. Relationships, there are no lines. There are no lines. Every time you are humiliated, every time you are impugned, you reach down into the depths of the love of God that flows through you and respond with that love. Again, it may just be silence. It may just be, well, you've given me something to think about, whatever it is. But that passivity is huge right now. So there you go, to encourage you. Patriot Jules. Oh, I'm a judge. Good. At the latest, oh, they spray painted Stonehenge. Of course. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't make the connection. Thank you, Patriot Jules. Absolutely. Yes, yes. A bunch of environmental activists spray painted Stonehenge. And she said, good. Yeah, I mean, she's in a destructive phase right now. These people aren't about, and I shouldn't say these people. She's part of a spiritual war. That's not about building, it's about destroying. That's what it is. And the only thing that overcomes that darkness is the light of love. It's the only thing. More power to it. Now, again, we're not like you said, we're not talking politics here. Politics, by its definition, is use of power. When you're talking not politics, but the personal. When you're talking relationship, the only thing that's going to overcome that is your love. So stay in prayer. Ask God for the infinite capacity of love to flow through you. And she'll notice an amazing change in you. And that love cannot but help melt her heart. So love you, Jules. Thank you for that. Liza Alexander, do you feel many of us have been schooled to believe Putin is all bad? I think he surely has done some things I would never approve of, but I'm not spending Russian. But I'm not spending Russian is a bad place to live. Example, we keep hearing he jailed his opponents. This makes no sense, really. Putin's polls have him at 80% above, around approval. Yeah, Lisa. I mean, again, I get a lot of pushback on my take of Putin. So I understand Putin is part of the rise of a civilizationalist age, a new conservative world. I do not define conservative in the limited American or British libertarian tradition or liberal tradition. I define conservative as a traditionalist. Right? If these things are traditions, they're part of this larger thing called tradition. Capital T, right? So Rene Guénon writes about that, or Julius Evola write about the great tradition, as it were. The world is going back to nation, culture, custom, tradition, and no one prefigured that massive global return than Putin. Putin, in his speeches in 2012. Up until 2012, Putin was extremely pragmatic. He wanted to join NATO at one point, right? He and Tucker were talking about that. Putin was extremely pragmatic. He was not a hardliner by any stretch of the imagination. That's one of the reasons why Yeltsin wanted. He picked him out of almost nowhere. A former lawyer, a former intelligence officer, and picked him almost out of nowhere because he was so impressed by his pragmatism, and that he thought he was going to be able to bring all the quarreling factions in this new emerging Russia that nobody even knew what it was going to be like. He thought he was going to be able to navigate that pretty well. But in 2012, so all that to say is, prior to 2012, I don't know. I wouldn't have been that enamored with Putin. But after 2012, starting in 2012, when he was running for his third term as president, he took a noticeably civilizationalist turn in all of his speeches. And it was very, very clear that he was planning something akin to this invasion in Ukraine at that time. Because, and that's not to applaud the invasion or anything like that, because it was evidence that he was done with the secular liberal West. He was done with them. He had tried in every way possible to try to bring Russia into the liberal fold, the liberal international order. And every single time, and Professor Jeffrey Sachs has talked about this, Professor John Mearsheimer has talked about this, every single time we betrayed him. Every single time. Sorry, that's maybe not the whole story, but that is part of the story. Every single time NATO and the EU and the dolts in DC betrayed him. Every single time. And he said, that's it, we're done. At the same time, he seems to have drawn from a growing, burgeoning civilizationalist movement that was already happening around the world. It was certainly already going on in Eastern Europe, in many parts of Eastern Europe and in Asia. certainly in Africa, where more and more nations, in Middle East, of course, more and more nations we're saying, we don't want to be part of this liberal world order either. We don't want this one-size-fits-all political and economic system superimposed upon us. We want to go back to before, like, say, before around the end of World War II. We want to go back to where our political and cultural priorities were prior to the rise of this liberal dominance over the world, this liberal international order that really begins after World War II, because the East is basically been pummeled to death. Or Japan and China's still poor and so forth. And Europe has been destroyed, and the Soviet Union has been largely destroyed. I mean, the world was basically destroyed. And the United States rebuilt the world order in accordance with what's called the liberal international order. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, 1991, we began the World Trade Organization. We began to enforce all of these institutions on all nations that wanted to be considered civilized. Ironically, if you didn't want to be considered rogue and North Korean and Cuba, if you didn't want to be considered one of these rogue nations, you had to join our institutions like the IMF and the WTO and the World Bank and the like. Those institutions provided the order, provided the laws and the obligations upon which all nations had to conduct themselves. And more and more nations were saying, we don't want this anymore. We don't want the United States and Western Europe dictating to us how we conduct business, how we do our culture. That we don't want them redefining our religion, telling us our religion isn't allowed in the public square. What the heck is that? Religion is just for private things. Who came up with that? Oh, that's a 18th century Western European Enlightenment notion that enthroned science as the scientific rationalism is the sole way of understanding reality. More and more nations went in that direction. What happened was Putin is somewhere, we don't know. All we do is analyze his speeches. Somewhere, some way, he started tapping into that language. Russia is not a state. It's not a nation. It's a civilization. It's a unique civilization that shares some affinity with Western civilization, but is also its own unique, but also with Asian civilization. And therefore, it is uniquely Eurasian. It is the bridge between the world. And it's our religions, it's our customs, it's our particularly the Russian Orthodox faith that is the emblematic symbol of the highest aspirations of humanity for this planet. And we are going to be by protecting through his policy known as spiritual security, by protecting the church, we protect the moral values that have preserved Russian civilization for 1,000 years and will preserve us for another 1,000. And that means keeping woke nonsense out of Russia, both in terms of its pop culture, but also in terms of its politics. I'm sorry. It's hard to have a problem with a guy who talks like that. I'm sorry. I don't care. I don't live in Russia. I don't run around going, I'm just going to say this because you bring something up here, Lisa. For the United States to lecture Putin on how he conducts his politics, that's akin to seeking marriage counsel from a serial adulterer. We have lost all moral high ground in that, especially with our weaponized legalism. We overthrow countries left and right. Jeffrey Sachs has talked about that. There was a book, what is it, published in 2017, 2019. Very, very well. It's a scholarly book. It's from one of the scholarly presses. I'm forgetting now. But the title will come to me when I'm not thinking of it. But she basically looks at 60 individual covert operations that mostly the CIA conducted since, I believe, the 1950s to overthrow governments all over the world. Overthrow governments we don't like. And yes, that involved killing people. So this notion that Putin is this evil guy who jails his opponents while we're somehow paragons of freedom and liberty and democracy is a joke. It's a joke. I put my I put my support behind civilizationalists everywhere. Because I think the liberal democratic order is basically dead. I think, and liberals killed it when all is said and done. So I could keep going with that, but that's my thing. I think Putin is one of the most important figures on the planet when it comes to the rise of a new civilizationalist order, and he is absolutely flummoxing the right people. And in that sense, he's got my support in that sense. Thanks, Lisa. Kasha, good morning, Steve. What's your take on the young thug trial in Georgia? Do you think the judge will be forced to step down? So much corruption. Fannie Mae, Fannie Willis, Fannie Mae. So put your investments there. No, Fannie Willis. We'll see. It's basically it's dead. It's dead. It's not going to happen until after November, because an all-Republican Georgia appellate court is going to be looking at this judge, what's his name, Scott something, this current judge's decision not to dismiss Fannie Willis, and they probably won't render a decision until October or after November. So it's over. It's done. And she could continue to do this. And we'll also see what happens with the presidential immunity decision coming from the Supreme Court. We'll see if that has anything to do with it. But I think we don't. I'm not even really paying attention to it anymore. It's just I mean, I've done plenty of videos on it to point out exactly what you're talking about, Kasha, the corruption, the carnivalesque nature of it. It is what helps to contribute to the delegitimization of our public institutions, and there's just no words for how ridiculously comical it is at this point. So I don't think you have to worry. I think it's gone, more or less. Carol, in light of the significant speed of Biden's decline, do you still hold to the premise of the DNC not replacing him? Was relieved to hear Michelle backed out. Comply. Your grandma groupie. Hey, Carol, always great hearing from you. Yeah, again, it's not even a matter of he can't. It's just, or they can't. Yeah, it's not a matter of whether he's going to finish the race. It's just a matter of how they could legally replace him. I just don't know how they can do it. They may come up with some way of doing it. And again, if he blows the debates, there's going to be enormous pressure to replace him. I mean, you even have, freaking Serpent Head, right? Coming out and saying, I didn't want Biden to run. I didn't think he should run. I mean, think about, you're saying that about your incumbent president, James Carville. I mean, he is the Democrat strategist extraordinaire, and he's coming out and saying he shouldn't have run. We made a mistake running him, but he'll also say, but now we're stuck with him, so we got to do what we can to try to get him over the finish line. But when he loses in November, he'll come back and say, I didn't ever think he should have run. I said it the first time. So I don't know how they're going to do it, Carol. America the Free, since the appeals court denied Steve Bannon's request yesterday to stay out of prison, what's his path forward? Do you think the feckless Republicans in the House will step in? You're bringing up the feckless Republicans in the House. The Paul Ryans, the Rupert Murdochs, the Neil Cavutos, the ones who are cheering this poll behind the scenes, Miss Fox poll. No, I don't think they will. They're not going to come to his rescue. They hate MAGA. Again, they live in a completely different cultural space than MAGA. They are cosmopolitan. They are urban. They're woke. I mean, they're very comfortable with wokeness. They don't have a problem with it because they're part of the neo-feudalized order of billionaire and bureaucrats on the one hand, and this clerisy class enforced ideology on the other that forces compliance. It doesn't allow for any meaningful dissent. So no, I don't see it. I'm unless a miracle happens, Steve's going to jail in July. There's just no way around it. Absolutely no way around it. Again, anyone, if Piers Morgan ever looks at any of us and says, yeah, but Putin jails his opponents, I mean, What do you, you need an exorcist vomit scene. Just, I mean, what do you say to this stuff anymore? It's just, it shows how myopic we are. We are literally doing that and more. So it's insane. And Republicans are no longer fit for purpose. This is one of the reasons why I look at some of the poll analysis out there from guys who are more on the left. No, don't worry, Joe Biden, he's going to win. He's going to win because, I mean, look at how low the Republicans are polling. Look at how bad they did in 2022. Does anyone need to explain to you the fundamental gap that exists between the amount of support that Republicans get versus the amount of support Trump gets? Does anyone have to explain that to you? The difference between 2016, 2018? The difference between the support that Trump got in 2020 versus what your milquetoast Republicans got in 2022, your Kevin McCarthy Republicans got in 2022. I mean, come on. I mean, literally, come on. What's true? We see it in every poll. Trump could be polling 7, 8, 9 points higher than the down ticket Republican. So the Republicans are just not there yet. I mean, there's no, yeah, we got our Marjorie Taylor Greens, we got our Matt Gaetz, yeah. We've got our Masseys and all, but we're just not as a party. They are still part of the old, Washington establishment aristocracy. When they, it doesn't matter how ideological they are. When you get sworn into office as a representative or senator, you are told in no uncertain terms, you are now the ruler of the universe. You are not representing your constituents. You are ruling the world now. We're going to be more concerned about what's happening in Ukraine than we are in what's happening in El Paso. Because we rule the world. And so we have to prioritize. Putin is not at the border of El Paso. And that Putin is worse than a mass invasion of 13 million illegals. So there you go. I think, unfortunately, Steve's gonna get it. And it's nothing boils my blood more. Chuck, come on, Doc. We all know Biden will not be capable of debating Trump. Not even remotely possible. They won't let it happen. If they do, it will intentionally take him out of the race to be replaced at the DNC. What say you? So that is all right. So you're putting forward one of the theories. Yes, one of the theories is that Trump is that Biden is being basically sacrificed. He is going to implode. The world will see it, and the Democrats will have no choice but to find an alternative. We'll see. I'd be happy if that theory turns out to be true. We'll see. I don't think he's going to be capable of debating Trump. Again, I'm just saying, don't underestimate technology. Don't underestimate the ability to artificially, prime an imploding person. And as I understand it, all this priming just makes it worse because you're actually replacing the cognitive function rather than enhancing it. You're artificially replacing it basically with meds and so forth. So no, I'm with you. We'll see. Rock Dog, Dr. Steve, it seems Putin is doing what we should have been doing after 1991 worldwide, including with Russia. How quickly can a Trump presidency restore reputation worldwide? Okay, good question. It's a very, very good question. I don't know the answer to that because the problem with our system is it's very unstable internally. Now, we've shown remarkable stability externally. The United States has basically had a singular crusader-like mentality in international affairs, certainly since 9/11, since 2001, and since Bush adopted a liberal Wilsonian internationalism, interventionism and the like. So the world, I mean, even Barack Obama got caught up in that with Libya and Syria. And so there's no question that at least I think that the world sees a highly expansionist, crusader-like mentality among the three-letter agencies and the State Department and the military that has basically taken over DC. So again, no matter who gets put into office, that crusader-like mentality tends to always prevail. If Trump can radically overturn that, then he's going to make some very important inroads internationally, particularly among China and Chinese and Russian officials, Middle Eastern officials, Turkey. He's gonna make some inroads there where they say, well, maybe he effectively knocked out the deep state, but they're not going to be holding their breath because they know in 4 years he'll be gone and someone else will be coming in, and they have no idea who that'll be, and for all they know, they're just going to go right back to their old shenanigans. So the advantage that long range, and again, I'm not saying we should have this. I'm just saying, just objectively, the advantage to long-term tenures, like you're seeing with Xi in China or Putin in Russia or Erdogan in Turkey, the advantage, or even just sort of the mullah structure in Iran, which is, it's been pointed out by others, we have, it's called our media. We don't have mullahs, we have a media, and the media dictates what you're allowed and not allowed to say. That's why they hate Trump so much, because he keeps violating those dictates. But even the mullahs in Iran, there is a continuity to how the nation governs and approaches other nations internationally that we just don't necessarily have. Again, we have a continuity, and it unfortunately is a crusader-like continuity where we go around lecturing nations that they need to be like us, and if they're not, we just overthrow them in color revolutions like we did in Ukraine in 2014, the Maidan Revolution. So I think you've got this continuity, but it's a continuity they don't like. If it gets change with Trump, they'll just be concerned, however, because we're so volatile and because we go back and forth so much in our politics every 4 years, I think they might be very worried that it's going to change. So it's going to take time. It's going to take time. The United States it's going to have a long road of repentance internationally before other nations trust us. Certainly, Russia's Putin has made it in no uncertain terms. He is done dealing with the West. He is done. It's over. The rapprochement is decades in the making with Russia. Unfortunately, we ruined that. Our adults in DC ruined it. We had an amazing opportunity with Russia, particularly being two of the biggest Christian nations on the planet. We blew it. Star, do you think they're gearing up to say they can't turn over the running of the country to convicted felon, and that's where we're headed? Do you see civil war since we can't survive another year of this regime? Yeah, well, they'll certainly pull shenanigans. They always do. They did it with Bush. They did it with Trump part one. They'll pull shenanigans. Whether or not they're going to be able to be successful in a Republican Congress would be near impossible. I just don't see it. Oh, and as far as civil war, were they to be successful, if the American people voted in Trump and then the Democrats came in and maybe a couple of rhinos came in and thwarted that, it would be I think you would see a civil war. The next regime would be totally illegitimate. Bob, what do you make of Trump's proposal that foreign graduates of U.S. colleges, should automatically get green cards? Oh, I knew you were somebody. Oh, Bob, I knew somebody was going to ask me that. This is Trump. I'm just going to come out and say this is Trump's weakness right here. This is Trump. You don't know who's the last person he talked to. And for whatever reason, he's easily swayed. Now, within limits, within a range, but he is a bit politically schizophrenic when it comes to like individual policies. And it just seems to be, it depends on who he's been talking to last. So if he's been talking to Stephen Miller last, Once you've once you're if you're a foreigner, once you graduated, you're out of here. Get out. And then you have to reapply. But if he's been talking to Tim Scott, right, then why don't you give him green cards? It's just, that'll get you the Latino vote. It's just it's absurd. It's dumb. It's dumb. It's the last thing Americans generally want to hear. When you see polls of 60% of the public, 60%, including like 30 or 40% of Democrats, wanting mass deportations, stop talking about green cards. It's a stupid thing to do. And stop listening to this advisor class that probably ultimately has ties with Mitch McConnell. Just stop. So I think it's dumb, to be honest with you. Absolutely dumb. And keep in mind, I'm married to someone who once had a green card. So, I mean, it's just, this isn't an animus at all. It's just politically stupid. Rock Dog, Dr. Steve, this Fox News poll again is proof that the sewer doesn't want people here seeing just how hated we are now around the world since 2020. How do we change that? I know, Rock Dog, it's hard. And it's not even administration. Again, even Obama got caught up in all of it. Mike Johnson got caught up in all of it, right? No money for Ukraine until we fix the southern border. And then he gets brought in to a meeting with CIA, FBI operatives, and national security operatives. And he comes up, well, we need money. They've convinced me we need money for Ukraine. I mean, they have I don't know what it is. They just have a way of convincing. And so we're going to need someone who could come in and totally overturn the administrative state of Washington, D.C. And we'll have to see if Trump is the one. If he's not, our foreign policy and our perception around the world will not change. It's just not, because, I mean, we're going to be overturning governments and in color revolutions. I mean, you have to remember that's what Putin is scared to death of. That's what Xi's scared to death of. That's what Erdogan's scared to death of. That's what the mullahs in Iran are scared to death of. I mean, that's what they're all scared to death of. They're scared to death. That's what freaking Modi in India is scared to death of. They're scared to death of the State Department launching some kind of successful color revolution in their nation. It's been said, why is the U.S. government the only one that's not been overturned? It's because there's no State Department in the United States government. No, there's no, not State Department. There's no, why am I forgetting? There's no consulate. There's no American consulate in the United States. It's just, I mean, the American consulate, no matter where you go, just seems to be around the world, just seems to be the place where malarkey happens, as Joe Biden would say, as a bunch of nonsense ends up happening in terms of overturning political orders. And as long as countries feel threatened by us, that we're going to start getting involved, our embassies are going to be places of strategery where nefarious forces plan on overthrowing your state, we're going to get pushed back against. That's why they're more interested in Russia and China, aligning with Russia and China. 80% of the world, 85% of the world's more interested in aligning with Russia and China. Well, obviously, we'd have to include Russia and China, that 85%, than they are with the United States, because at least they know they're not going to try to overthrow the regime. They're not in, because they're not crusader states. So anyway, there you go, Rockdog. Patriot Jules, what do you think of Maxine Waters stating that black people ain't never voting for an orange man? And flip that to Jane Fonda, who just looks so stupid. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the tribalization that's taking over it's all over the world, right? It's called reterritorialization. So as globalization and its centralizing forces breaks up and shatters, populations are increasingly returning to the local in terms of their political identities, but everyone's returning in different ways. And there's basically three ways. There's the colossal civilizationalist outworking we're seeing in Russia and China and India and Turkey and the like. There is the There is the nationalist, which is the MAGA movement or the Viktor Orban and so forth, this kind of civic nationalist that we may be all different, but we're all one under, we're one Hungary or one United States, or El Salvador is seeing the same thing. Javier Milei in Argentina and the like. But then there is tribalism. There is the breaking up of racial, religious, and regional specificity. And that's Maxine Waters. She's just a tribalist at this point, and she thinks in tribalist terms, like Joy Reid on MSNBC. Joy Reid cannot but think in this tribalist way. It would have been absolutely unthinkable 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. Now it's second nature. The problem in our country is you're only allowed to think in tribalist terms from the vantage point of the left. That's approved by the left. If it's tribalist terms on the right, like a civic nationalism of some kind that MAGA pushes, no, then that makes you inherently evil. So, Star, what are the chances of current regime leaving White House when they lose? Chatter lately referring to deep state, saying Trump won't admit loss and would never allow another election. We know they accuse Trump and MAGA of exactly what they're going to do, the projection. Excellent, Star. Again, they can do that, but whenever they accuse Trump of this, he'll never leave again, they fail to recognize the incredibly powerful dynamic of delegitimation, which Trump uses all the time to his credit or to his advantage, you see. So he's very much aware of de-alignment and delegitimation and the like. But what these dynamics are is the more you rule against the will of the people, the more you erode whatever semblance of trust and confidence is needed for you to continue to rule. Just ask the Soviet Union. Just look at the current state of the Berlin Wall. When confidence and trust and support of public institutions erodes to, at some point, 20%, 15%, 10%, it's over. The system collapses because the system operates on what's called legitimacy. The only way we allow the state to use legal violence on us, right? Arrest us, tax us, you name it, regulate us. These are all forms of some kind of coercion. The only way we allow this small group of people to exercise those very great powers is if we trust them. It's if we legitimize that. And the only way we end up trusting and having confidence and supporting that is if they are constantly in the process of re-legitimizing. And we say, yes, this is good. The more power they have in that sense, then the freer we are, the more protected we are, the more prosperous we are. The moment it starts working in the opposite direction, all bets are off. That is a state that looks like it's gonna go down. I talked about this in my video on North Korea. What's the secret sauce of North Korea? North Korea, by any objective measure, should have collapsed decades ago. It's stronger today than ever. How? And the answer, more and more scholars are saying, ironically, religion. The religion of the emperor. It's a classical religion. It's been around for thousands of years. There's scholars who believe they got it from Japanese Shintoism because the Japanese occupied North Korea, well, the whole of Korea, for the first half of the 20th century. So that's where they learned it. That's where Kim Il-sung originally learned it and implemented it. And not that he was a fraud per se. I'm not making an argument one way or the other. I just think that was part of the frames of reference, especially coming out of the fascist period of World War II. Those were the frames of reference of how you do state. State is sacred. State is divine. The leader, the supreme leader, is divine. He is a god. And the people are healthy and right the more they faithfully recognize that and worship that. Now you could say that's cultic, you could say whatever it wants, but it is dripping with legitimacy. I mean, it is flooded with legitimacy. And if you get rid of legitimacy, the moment somebody came in and started plausibly preaching a different gospel, as it were, than the gospel of Pyongyang, then people will turn away from it. They'll have nothing to do with it. So they will only, I think, end up destroying themselves. I think the more they try to illiberally cling on to power, the more they undermine the very liberalism they claim to defend. RB, if Biden-Harris hold, will there be a VP debate? Do I need to stock up on popcorn? Good question. I don't know. I haven't heard if there's going to be a VP debate or not. Obviously, there'll be in the fall. I mean, the very fact that we're having this debate this early right now is totally unprecedented. We've never seen this before. And it seems to me, I don't know. I don't know what their reasoning was. So, I mean, they must have some. They're generally not very bright. So, but I would stock up on popcorn either way. Mark, the Rosebush, Steve, did the Supreme Court weigh in on Florida's sanctuary state, or did feds just let it happen? I think the feds just let it happen. I think it's very difficult with this current Supreme Court to fight back against federalism and federalist sentiments. They struck down, remember, the Supreme Court struck down every single federal mandate, for the exception, I think there was a military mandate they allowed, and some nursing, some medical mandates that they allowed, just because of some federal precedent historically. But every other federal mandate during the COVID period was struck down. There have been books written about this. This is one of the best federalist Supreme Courts we've had in a long time. I mean, that's why they killed Roe v. Wade. They killed Roe v. Wade because they made the basic argument that the Constitution doesn't deal with abortion. Sorry. You can pretend it does till you're blue in the face. It doesn't. Abortion, the 14th Amendment does not apply to abortion. When the 14th Amendment was passed, abortion was illegal in every state in the country. The architects of the 14th Amendment did not see abortion as entailed in those freedoms. So if it's not addressed by the Constitution, then we send it back to the states and the will of the governed and the consent of the governed. That's a federalist system. So that's what I want to see under this current Supreme Court, which we'll probably have for another 10 to 20 years. I want to see some serious red state action, sanctuary state action. If things go south in November and the Democrats have already engaged in shenanigans. There's already been election shenanigans. They are running around. They are running around, literally pinning a scarlet letter, CF, convicted, two scarlet letters on Donald Trump. The very people who refuse to say illegal alien are the people who are gleefully saying convicted felon. They have already tarnished this election. That's already been done. And so if those current shenanigans are successful in November, we're going to have to, I think, pivot and think about building red state arcs that I think the Supreme Court will protect. Jeffrey, Steve, the ATF, FBI, CIA, IRS, all must go in 2024. Your thoughts? Amen, Jeffrey. And it's really interesting because at least when it comes to the IRS, Trump is alluding to that. You heard him even thinking getting rid of income taxes, just replacing them with trade tariffs. Amen. Bring it on. Awesome. It'd be awesome. So yeah, now get it all. Get rid of it all. They're no longer fit for service. Rock Dog, Dr. Steve. Chlamydia Harris, polling worse than Pedo Joe, has got to have the puppet masters of the White House scared beyond anything. Do you think they'll try to start World War III in October just to destroy the world rather than lose their power? We'll see. I don't know, Rock Dog. I don't know. Hopefully not. By God's grace, hopefully not. Hopefully there are prevailing. There are far more rational sentiments prevailing in D.C. than that. Rich, there seems to be a lot of propaganda against Putin for the damage being done to Christian churches in Ukraine. I do recall the last 15 or 20 years, Putin standing up for the Christians in Russia. Seems as if the lamestream media is spreading lies. Yeah, I mean, no one has been a more staunch defender of classical Christianity as a politician, as a world leader than Vladimir Putin. No one. So to say, oh, he's destroying all these churches. I mean, yeah, right. I mean, I don't even know what to say. And you guys, keep in mind, this is the same media that doesn't want you posting the 10 Commandments in a public school classroom, like what's happening in Louisiana. They have no problem, all the kinds of colorful books they read. They have no problem with that, but 10 Commandments, no way. So anything they have to say about the church or Putin or anything like that, to me, is just, it's just blather. Means nothing. Mark, Steve, what do you think about the recent SCOTUS decision to drop the bump stock ban? Yeah, Biden offered to sign anything from Congress that would ban bump stocks and rifles. Do you think such a bill would even be taken up by the House? No, it'll get knocked down immediately. And as a matter of fact, as I understand it, Mike Johnson's already said they're not even going to put it up to a vote at this point, based on the latest decision. We talked about this months ago. And I predict, and it was right after they rendered a ruling that let it stay, and everyone went like, oh no, the Supreme Court. And I was just like, and then no, and don't get me wrong, this is not because I have this intuition. No, based on what I was reading, so some of the more cogent and in full disclosure, websites like National Review that I normally detest, I do read for their legal analysis. Their legal analysis is actually excellent. Their political analysis that's so pathetic, but they're never Trumpers. But when all said and done, that decision, because they are Federalists, that decision allowed the appellate process to continue. Oftentimes what happens is they file appeals to try to bypass the appellate process. They go directly to Supreme Court. Supreme Court takes it, goes, nope, we're not going to listen to it, or nope, we're going to let this thing play out. Everyone goes, oh no, they're going against the Second Amendment. No, they're letting the process play out. They want to see the kind of precedent that is formed in lower appellate courts in accordance with the new Federalist paradigm of the Supreme Court. And if it doesn't go the way they think it should, they'll knock it down. And Second Amendment thus far has been relatively sacrosanct in this court. Second Amendment has been relatively sacrosanct for about 20 years. The Roberts Court, that's the one thing the Roberts Court, even with Anthony Kennedy on it, it's the one thing the Roberts Court has done very, very well on. There's been books on this, the Second Amendment Court. It's been brilliant. If anything, it's made the NRA go out of business. Nobody needs the NRA anymore. I mean, the NRA's done other things to make itself go out of business, but it's just, you could be assured, no matter what anti-gun law Democrats try to pass, it will go down in flames eventually in the Supreme Court. So, great question, Mark. Angel, Trump met recently with members of Congress in D.C. Do you think this has put any amount of steel into our GOP representative spines? Probably not until he wins. And even then, there's just something about being a swamp rat in D.C. I mean, it's the swamp gases they breathe in. I don't know what it is. So we'll have to see. It's a good question, Angel. We'll have to see how they, the first thing they can do right now, of course, is overturn the prison sentences for someone like Steve Bannon, right? Or Peter Navarro. I mean, this is insane that they're spending time in prison for something that Merrick Garland did. Merrick Garland did it. Merrick Garland ignored a subpoena. He did exactly the same thing, and he's just shoving it in our face with that smug smile. Anyway. And that is it. Gang, have a wonderful weekend. I love you. Stay safe. Keep praying. And I'll see you on Monday. God bless.